based on the Sunshine Coast, Australia. In this video, I'm going to show you how to produce mural proofs for clients using Photoshop. Now, this is a two-part video because the other way that I also provide proofs is in Procreate. So this video is about Adobe Photoshop, and the next video will be about using Procreate. The reason why I have used Adobe Photoshop to produce proofs is because my background is as a graphic designer. So I've always had Photoshop on my laptop because I've needed it for a lot of client projects. But I've found lately it's probably easier to use Procreate, and I prefer to use Procreate nowadays. The reason why it's really, really important to provide a proof prior to painting your mural is because there's nothing more daunting than showing up to a large wall with a bunch of paint and not knowing what you're doing and having no plan. The second reason is anyone that's letting you paint on their wall is going to want to see an idea of what you're going to do beforehand. A lot of the clients that I have worked with really appreciate seeing the design on the wall as a digital asset prior to me actually producing it. It gives them confidence that it's going to turn out all okay, because it can be quite a daunting project for some clients. So in this video, let's go through Adobe Photoshop. So a lot of the times I create the artwork in a mix of Photoshop and Illustrator. So if there's like pattern areas in it, and I mainly compile it all into Illustrator. So from Illustrator, I save my file as a JPEG or a PDF, and then I open it into Photoshop. So let me share my screen with you. So this is a project I painted last year. This is the outside wall of the local RSL. That was a photograph that I took prior to doing this mock-up. I did have to make some corrections in it. You can see that the shadows of the lines aren't working too well together. I just had to get some paint marks off it. And then I brought my final design into Photoshop so that I can then pull it onto the wall. So let's drag this into its own window, and I've just got the little pointer tool selected, and we'll drag that across. Now that is super big, so I'm Control T so that I can transform. Now I'm using the latest version of Photoshop, which means that you don't have to hold down Shift, but to keep the artwork at its original ratios. But if you have an older version of Photoshop, you'll be having to hold down Shift to make sure that your artwork doesn't get smushed. So I bring it in. That'll do for now. Now what I like to do is double click on the layer so you can see it all here. Okay, and then I'm going to bring the opacity down a little bit so I can line it up with the wall. That's quite good. So then I'm going to go and skew it. So edit, transform, skew. And this means that I can pull the edges out. Don't hold down Shift while you do this one. And try and line the footpath up with the footpath and the outer edge up with the outer edge. Let's zoom in on this a little bit so it's a bit easier to see. Edit, transform, skew. We'll come over this side. Now I'm not painting the top there, so we won't pull it all the way to the top of the wall. Now this doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to show the client what it's going to look like. So I think I'm on the money there. So I'm going to come back here, make sure the layer is clicked on, and then I can drag the opacity back up. Now I don't drag it all the way to the top because it looks a little bit too bright. So I pull it slightly down. Then I just save this as a JPEG. So file, export. The new program makes you export, but you can also, if you've got an older program, save as JPEG. But this one you'll need to export as JPEG. Just make sure it's not ginormous. And it's only 1,000 pixels wide, so that's good. And then export and save it to wherever you want and email that off to your client. So here's a photo of the finished product. So you can see that it looks pretty similar to the mock-up. Pretty similar. So that's a reasonably easy wall to work with. Then I have this other wall. Now this one's a bit more difficult because it's got some weird angles. So let's have a play with this one. This is my design here. So let's pull this over to the side and drag it in. Beautiful. Let's bring the opacity down so that I can see where it's going. Nice. And then Command T to transform. Oh, don't hold shift. I got to remember to not hold shift. It's a bad habit that I'm now in. I'll stretch that out all the way to the edge here. Okay, so let's hit enter. So what I'm going to do firstly is get rid of the white around the outside. So we'll bring the opacity back up, and then I'll just use my little dancing ants and hold it over the top here. And because I've only got this selected on this layer, it's not going to delete the background. So then I'm just hit delete and do the same thing at the bottom. Just select the white there, hit delete. Same at the edge. Delete. And again, delete. So to get the marching ants to go away, Command D. So you'll see that this wall is almost in two different parts where it angles in the middle there. So what I'm going to do is cut this image in half. So I'm going to get my marching ants again and do an approximate cut here. Now what I'm going to do is Command C, then Command V, and if you look down here, it'll pop up with another layer. There we go, that's that second layer. And if we go back here to this bottom layer, we need to delete that part. So I'm just going to hit delete. So that's actually deleted that section. So you can see that's one, that's the other. So we're going to work at on one at a time. So let's work on this smaller part. Again, bring the opacity down so we can line it up nicely. Oh, that's actually a bit too tall. This design I actually ended up accidentally making too tall because I didn't take into consideration the deck. So I'm just going to line that up there. And then I'm going to cut the top off. Now, if you've got different angles to cut the top off, you can go up to the lasso tool and grab the this lasso tool. And if you just click once, click again, and again, and then finish off your shape. See the little zero next to that. And then you see the marching ants, then hit delete. And then Command D to deselect. And the same with the decking here. We're going to get rid of the design that's over the top of the decking. Marching ants, and then hit delete. So that side of the wall is done. So we can bring the opacity up a little bit. Then if we work on the second part of the wall, this one's going to be a little bit trickier. So we'll drag this up here and line it up with the other part. And then we'll skew it into position. So edit, transform, skew. And we'll line up the bottom with the bottom and the top with the top. Lovely. Let's reduce the opacity so we can see what we're working with. So that looks to line up really well. The only thing is we've got a chunk here that's not meant to be there. So we'll grab this tool again, the lasso tool, and we're just going to cut that shape out. So got the little marching, oh, where's the marching ants? There we go, marching ants. Make sure you're on that layer and then hit delete and then Command D to get rid of the marching ants. And that's us done. So bring the opacity up. Beautiful. Don't worry too much that it's sitting behind the fence. They'll be able to see that the fence is there. This is basically to show the client what it's going to look like on the wall. So that is what I would send to a client. Save that as a JPEG and send that off. So I hope that this has helped you. If you've got Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop on your computer, I hope this has given you a couple of tips on how you can produce a mural proof for your client prior to painting. The next video will be about creating the same type of proof, but in Procreate on the iPad with an Apple Pencil. So stay tuned for that, and don't forget to like and subscribe.